This Sunday's gospel is a continuation of a longer gospel that takes place on the evening of that first Easter Sunday. So the first part of it that the gospel is kind of assuming you have in the background of your mind is this road to Emmaus walk, where these two disciples of Jesus are walking from Jerusalem to Emmaus. So they're leaving town on Easter Sunday morning, and Jesus appears to them, and they don't recognize him, and they end up having this Bible study, and then Jesus celebrates Mass with them, right? And it says that he was known to them in the breaking of the bread. Then these two guys go back to Jerusalem, and they go tell the other disciples, we just saw Jesus alive. And that's when this gospel picks up. Jesus shows up in the upper room, and the guys are terrified. They think they're seeing a ghost. Because remember, this is their best friend, this is their rabbi, the guy that they're trying to model their lives on, be exactly like him, do everything exactly like he does. And just a couple days before, they saw him publicly murdered by the Romans. And now all of a sudden, he's in the room in front of them. Like, how do you wrap your mind around that? So they are freaking out, thinking that they're seeing a ghost. And then they get this little mini lecture from Jesus that's fascinating, right? I love that he starts off with, why are you troubled and why do questions arise in your hearts? Because we saw them kill you and you're standing here. That's why we're questioning in our hearts what's going on, right? But then he goes on, look at my hands and my feet and see that it's myself. Touch me and see, because a ghost does not have flesh and bones as you can see that I have. Jesus is like, look, I have a physical body. I'm a real guy. This isn't just some figment of your imagination. This isn't some phantom or some apparition. You can't put your hand through me. When you touch me, I'm real. I have an actual body. When Jesus rose from the dead, his physical body rose to new life. Didn't just come back to life, back to his old life, rose to a new form of life, where now they're inside a locked room and he can show up in there. Meaning he either poofed into the room or he walked through the wall. Whatever he did it with a physical body. He looked a little bit different at times, and then he looked the way they wanted. Remember Mary Magdalene, Easter Sunday morning, didn't recognize Jesus, thought he was the gardener, even though she had been following him day in and day out for 3 years. She didn't recognize him until he wanted her to. So there's something about Jesus' risen body that looks different, but looks the same when he wants to. It's physical. It can be touched. You can stick your finger in the nail marks, right? It's a physical body. The Bible in St. Paul's letter to the Philippians says, your body and my body will be changed to become like Jesus' risen body. We're going to have physical bodies in heaven. We'll be body and soul composites. That's that line in the creed that says, I believe in the resurrection of the body. We're not talking about Jesus's. We're talking about our bodies coming back to, or being risen to new life in heaven. So that's one of the cool things going on in this gospel. Right, and then Jesus opens their minds to understand the scriptures, because even up to this point, they didn't really recognize that the Bible had been telling them for centuries that the Messiah was going to come, he was going to die, and he was going to rise again. They just didn't get it. And then Jesus opened up their minds to understand the scriptures. They had read these scriptures day in and day out their entire lives. They knew the book inside and out, but they didn't really know it. They needed Jesus to open up their minds to understand the scriptures. Maybe you and I are in that same position. We are super familiar with the gospel and the stories of Jesus' life. We are super familiar with some of the major stories in the Bible, in the Old Testament. Do we fully understand what God is saying through those stories, even though we know all the details? Or do we get lost on the fact that I already know the story and we zone out? So we need to pray, especially at Mass when those scriptures are read, for Jesus to open our minds to understand those scriptures, so that we can recognize who he is, how real he is, and how real he wants to be in our lives.